I think it was a disgraceful performance, and I think it should never be permitted to happen again.
That is very good.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Cricket Podcast, where we have another IPL special. We'll be reviewing all the games from the weekend, as well as the game we had to watch today. Yeah, as well as the game today. I'm Jack Cope and I am joined by Max Rowe Brown. How you doing, Max Rowe Brown?
Hello, Jack. I'm brilliant, mate. Top of the world and the IPL.
And I'm joined by Dan Weston, who I imagine is pretty sad at the moment, Dan.
I lost the Weston versus Max Rowe Brown derby yesterday. My boys are no longer top of the league, and therefore I will not be doing this podcast with my face mask on.
That's
plastic fan.
Glory hunter.
I have noticed I've been wearing this T-shirt for the last 3 or 4 of these podcasts. It's quite cheap, and I will say that I'm glad that they haven't invented a medium that can project smell across the internet, because it's not exactly fine here. Max, do we have any messages before we get on with the podcast?
We certainly do. The first message is for you, Jack, and that is that you should wash your clothes. The second message is for our listeners, and they should like this video, this live stream. They should subscribe and click the little bell button to stay up to date with all things the Cricket Pod, and they should follow us on Twitter and Instagram at the Cricket Pod.
And they should go further than that, Max. They should become a channel member of the Cricket Podcast. Donate from £1 to more than £1 to keep us going, or head over to Patreon, which is in the what do they call it? The show notes. In the show notes, where we get a better deal, and you can basically do the same thing. And we are, of course, sponsored by Woodstock Cricket. You can see the badge to my right. I think as you look at this, that's enough in terms of messages, though. I think, Max, isn't it? Do you want to talk us through today's cricket match? Because I was a bit downbeat about it in the intro, but there were moments.
There were, yeah. Let's get it. Just get it out of the way, shall we? So yeah, it was Punjab Kings and Kolkata Knight Riders in the latest battle of the dunces, I suppose, between two teams really struggling down the bottom of the table. Punjab batted first and got off to a very slow start. It was ponderous, wasn't it? On a ground that's seen so many runs lately, seems to possibly have started slowing up, but even then, it was pretty ponderous from Rahul and Agarwal up top. After they went, their soft middle was exposed, and they scored no runs either. And it was only a late blast from the recalled Chris Jordan that salvaged any sort of pride to the score as Punjab muddled their way to 124 or 123. But undeterred by Punjab's ineptitude, KKR got off to the worst possible start they could, and regularly smacked the ball straight to fielders to find themselves 9 for 2 and later 20 odd for 3. But Captain Morgan steadied the ship. Finally, a captain's innings from the Irishman, and he was aided by the excellent Tripathi, who once again has shown that he's sort of the standout player for KKR this season. And eventually, they made it home to what was a comfortable win, leaving Punjab Kings the latest to look really, really bad.
It's a little bit of a thing at the moment, wasn't it? The first week of the IPL, I swear, every game was like went to the final ball, or at least the final over. Now it seems like every other game, one of the teams just capitulates, raises the white flag, and heads for the bar. To be honest, Max, where should we start with this one, with getting involved in this?
Well, as always, I think chronology is always good. So why don't we start with it's a fairly common and I suppose popular topic of ours, and that is
it's a time-honoured tradition.
A time-honoured tradition, and that'll be KL Rahul and his ball eating.
It was bad. I've got on my notes here that going into this match, they were the worst batting team in the power play in the IPL. And I think thanks to today's performance, they probably put some distance between themselves and seventh. I think it really was an absolute shambles, to be honest. Sometimes I think Ross has made a bit of a name for himself going after KL Rahul. And we all find that very funny. But sometimes I think he's wrong, and I just can't be bothered to argue with him. Today, though, he was, I don't want to say solely responsible, but he set a tone that was so low and so poor that I don't really think that Punjab had anywhere to... They looked like it just took so much momentum out of the game from their perspective that they never really were able to recover. I don't know. Max, what did you think of it? I've got some more notes, but I don't want to just go on a long rant.
It was really strange to me because what I saw, it wasn't as if like there was an attempt there to get off to a really good start and that just didn't pay off or anything like that. There just seemed to be a real lack of intent.
Yeah.
I don't have the necessary ball by ball stats of attempted boundary shots to back that up, but from watching it, it just was a really weird. It looked like a really weird way to approach the game, and as you say, it sort of basically gave them the opposite of a head start. I gave them a handicap up front,
Well,
and meant that the rest had to come in and try and kick on. And once they all fell, it was kind of curtains, wasn't it?
That is basically my next note, is that every single game Punjab play, they have a deficit based on where they should be at the end of 6 overs. Now, the power play is called the power... It's not called the power play because you're not supposed to play powerful shots. It's like the easiest time in terms of where the fielders are to hit a boundary. And to not really even attempt that is incredibly dumb. It's just incredibly dumb because then you have to, the next 14 overs, you have to try extra hard to catch up with where you were. Dan, I mean, we're not wrong here. Are we missing something, or are they actually, as bad as it appears?
No, you've not missed a single thing. I mean, I just wish that Ross was here to talk about KL Rahul's latest exploits. I mean, look at it like this, right? They were... but something like 37 off the power play, which is dreadful, really. There were 14 overs left. If they scored 10 and over for the rest of the match, they still only get 1-7-6 or something like that, roughly ballpark figure. It's just not good enough. We saw if they haven't played IPL matches in Matera for a long time, but we've had the luxury of having the recent India versus England T20 international series there. Got some stats. Bowling average, 32.58. Bowling economy, 8.49. That's poor bowling in terms of the expectation of bowling on that surface. Pace average, 30.59. Economy, 8.37. Spin average is horrendous, 38.23. Economy, 8.79. All the evidence points to the fact that this was going to be a batting-friendly track, okay? And you're going to need to have a high par score to get somewhere in the game. And KL Rahul and to some extent Agarwal, at least you can give Agarwal a little bit more credit because he kind of had to oversee a little bit of a collapse at the same time. But he's basically put so much responsibility on their teammates. It's not really a surprise that they've all fallen in a heap. I've made some notes on the Punjab Kings innings today. Their top 7 scored 85 off 95 balls at a strike rate of 89.47. Okay, not to mention, I mean, I don't mind a high dot percentage, but 60 dots in the innings is just beyond horrific, Like, so they've faced almost 80% of their team's innings for a strike rate of less than 90. I mean. The thing is, they tried to hit at the end, thinking that like somehow they got to like 1, 2, 3, as if it's like some magical number. Their expectation of winning the match, having scored 1, 2, 3, is basically the same or virtually identical as scoring 90. They may as well have just hit and hit and hit and hit. And if they get 90, so be it. If they get 123, well, that's no upgrade. But they could have tried to get like 150 or 160, which would, as the match probably transpired, might have given them half a chance.
Can I just dive in as well on not exactly a tangential point, but I think kind of to back you up to some extent here on specifically KL Rahul, because it just happens so regularly that someone's got to do something about it. Basically, there is a narrative that surrounds KL Rahul's innings, and I'm calling them KL Rahul apologists. These people will claim that he's going slow because he knows the rest of the batting order can't bat, and that there's loads of responsibility on him. And in my opinion, that is absolute bollocks. Their batting lineup just isn't bad. They've got Chris Gale coming in at 3. They've got 3 openers to begin with. Then they've got Nicholas Pooran. Almost every team in the IPL would fancy a bit of Nicholas Pooran. Now, I know he's not fired, but that kind of brings us on to the second point. If one of your players opening the batting does what he does on such a consistent basis, almost every time you bat at 4 or 5, you have to try and dig your team out of a massive hole. And you're obviously not going to be able to do that on a very regular basis. You're obviously going to have to start your innings quicker than you want. You're playing in really suboptimal conditions, and the other team have got a lot of freedom in terms of how they bowl to you and how they can set fields. I just think that I mean, I don't know what it is you can say to him, or maybe this is just how he's going to play forever. But it's strikingly obvious that the guy is a major problem to this team, and until he resolves how he plays or how he opens the batting, basically, I don't think that Punjab will ever realise the potential that I actually think is in that team. I think they have a nice side. I've talked about Gale and Pooran. We've seen Shahrukh Khan play well. We've seen Deepak Hooda play well. There's no reason whatsoever to not go out and be really aggressive in the power play, unless you are just incredibly selfish, basically.
Well, he says strike rate doesn't matter. Maybe he did take that a little bit too literally here. Maybe he's told the whole team that strike rate doesn't matter.
Just over on Super Chat, boys, Vic London has said thank you for showing up, Dan. And I think he wants you to take your shirt off, but you don't have to do that.
I'll save that for Jack. Jack's regularly doing that.
Shall we, Max? Shall we move on to another point? And Vic's talked about Captain Morgan joining the party here. Is that your next point in this match, or is there somewhere else you'd like to take us first?
Yeah, we can go to that. I suppose that kind of skips over the helter-skelter start to the Kolkata Knight Riders innings. Two ducks in there up the top, and Shubman Gill once again not doing the business. So I mean, at that point we sort of feared, didn't we, for KKR that they were going to somehow contrive to still lose the game. But yeah, after that point, Morgan came in, and do you think this was? What did you make of the innings? So I think to me it looked it didn't look his most fluent, but I think there was some. I think it looked like he came out there with one of those mindsets of like, I'm time to try and shut a few people up.
Possibly. I mean, I think. So I think we spoke about on the last show how we're not entirely sure that Indian conditions particularly suit Owen Morgan's batting. And I'd still stand by that. However, I will say that Owen Morgan has shown over a long career that he is an adaptable player, that he is a good white ball batter. And so there's an element of just needing a bigger sample size. Like, yeah, he hasn't been that good in the first 5 matches. But if he plays 10, probably, over 10 innings or 20 innings, he'll probably play you 4 or 5 that are pretty decent, even in conditions which, maybe don't exactly suit the way he wants to bat. I thought it was the innings the game deserved, really, wasn't it? Like, I don't think Punjab deserved to get anything out of that match. I don't really think KKR were much better, although I think they probably did deserve to win overall. And I kind of think the ugliness and the attempted run out of Rahul Tripathi and the actual run out of Dre Russ, encapsulated that cricket match in sort of however many balls he faced, 40 or 50 balls. Do you reckon?
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. It was it was odd, wasn't it? It was not exactly the spectacle that you want to see in terms of the game as a whole, which does kind of bring us to a question we got on Twitter in a sort of tangential manner, which was whether you reckon there should be promotion and relegation in the IPL, whether we should invite a few more teams in and see if we can jettison some of the rubbish and give some other people a chance.
So that came across from Rickon. Dan, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, sure. So I think the first point I will make is that if there was relegation in the IPL, we probably wouldn't have seen today's match because Punjab Kings would have been relegated a long time ago. They'd be playing in like the Syed Mushtaq Ali Trophy or something like that.
So is that a tick in the box for relegation?
Yeah, I think so. Because at the end of the day, we've seen over and over and over again. I mean, more times than you could count on 50 pairs of hands. How many bad decisions IPL teams make? I'm talking about recruitment, I'm talking about retention, I'm talking about selection, batting orders, in-play strategy, death bowling, you name it, they've done it. But there's no accountability for it. I've said this before. You know, if there was promotion and relegation or like some absurdly huge prize money like they have in the Premier League or the Champions League for winning the tournament, then suddenly all these IPL franchises are going to be like, oh, well, it looks like we better actually find some smart people to run our franchises rather than some like random ex-player who's got 50 caps. Oh, he must be good. And there's no accountability, and when there's no accountability, there's no meritocracy. So they can basically just pick their friends and get away with it, and it's that simple, in my opinion. The owners are probably picking a lot of the team, stuff like that. It's just rubbish. The people who haven't got a clue are influential in this IPL decision making, and it's to be honest with you, it's not good, and the format needs to evolve massively, and that's one way of doing it. You know, if there's implications of being rubbish, basically, you get relegated. Then suddenly the owners are going to be intolerant to failure, and that's a massive, massive thing. I would love to see, so like, I don't know, 2 divisions of 6, 2 divisions of 8 in the IPL. I think it'd be absolutely brilliant. Couldn't wait to do it. You have like morning match, afternoon match, one in each division or something like that. Oh, it'd be unbelievable. Couldn't wait for it.
I think we'd struggle to cover it all.
Well, you'd be full time by then, wouldn't you? Because
that's true. It's quite interesting to discuss that actually in the debris of the European Super League, as it were. You could have the IPL moving in the opposite direction and maybe heading towards a more traditional model.
It's so true, because it's interesting because a lot of people's problem with the ESL was that there was no relegation. I'm like, franchise cricket's always been like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a slight difference, isn't there, of course, with the fact that franchise cricket has the draft system and the salary caps, which sort of enables a level playing field, which the European Super League would never have. But this is a cricket podcast, isn't it? Not a football one. We'll leave football. I
do think it's a really interesting debate to have, though, and I think the IPL is going to be 10 teams next year. If it wants to expand beyond that, it either needs to run for longer and become more like the NBA or baseball, or you probably do need to look into relegation and promotion. And they're probably the 2 routes to further expansion. There's a lot of noise in the chat about one absolutely spectacular moment in this match. I am, of course, talking about Ravi Bishnoi's sort of 40-yard sprint followed by a headlong dive. That was pretty good, wasn't it, Max?
Yeah, it's just what we like to see, isn't it? It's just what we like to see in the IPL. That kind of thing. There's it happens. It happens so often. That's sort of one of the reasons it's such a great competition. You get to see these sorts of bizarre things that happen. And Ravi Bishnoi, the latest to give us an example.
I think that was honestly one of the best catches I've ever seen.
Yeah,
just to cover that amount of ground and catch it.
It was just the speed that he was going at. The speed that he was going at to actually hold on to it was what impressed me the most. And I think that was, well, I suppose the one good bit of fielding in that innings.
Yeah, he did.
Everything else
he did get nutmegs twice after that.
Everything else is pretty much just throwing the ball over the boundary at your own.
I most enjoyed the fact that he could not believe he caught it. I think those are the moments in top level sport I like the most, when someone does something and they're like, "Holy shit, I didn't even know I could do that." Vic has got one question. I think this kind of goes back to what you guys were just discussing about promotion and relegation. He wants Dan to sort of briefly explain whether all teams have the same amount of money to buy players, or whether it's whoever Priorities Inter has a crush on. It's kind of a bit of both, isn't it? So in theory, they do have the same purse, but they don't always spend it, and where they spend it is confusing sometimes, Dan.
Yeah, well, I think we've covered the fact that where they spend it is confusing about 100 times before, because it confuses me every single time I watch an auction or a draft or whatever. It's just there seems to be no meritocracy, no strategy, no data-driven thinking among a lot of the purchases, especially the valuations of the purchases as well. With regards to spend on the budget, as far as I know, each team has to spend a minimum of 75% of the cap, but then it's up to them whether they spend the full amount. And I think some teams, off the top of my head, I think potentially Rajasthan try not to spend all of their budget. I think we've seen that in previous years. And for example, they could have ended up buying Jai Richardson this year as opposed to Mustafeza, stuff like that. But that's their own choice. In theory, everyone can spend the same amount of money, and I think that's a really good thing for the kind of level playing field of this competition.
Okay, are we ready to sort of put that match to bed? It's a good win for KKR. I guess it, brings them somewhat back into the tournament now.
Yeah, I think so. It's sort of shaping up a bit like last year, isn't it? We've got three runaway leaders, and everyone else down the bottom is kind of still within a shout.
Yeah, apart from maybe SRH. Who we are about to move on to.
What a beautiful segue that was.
It's almost like we planned it, which we definitely didn't. Delhi Capitals, they took on Sunrisers Hyderabad in yesterday's evening game. So just for reference, we're going in reverse order, listeners. The Capitals, they won the toss. They opted to bat first, and they got off to a flyer as Prithvi Shaw became the first batter since 2013 to hit the first 3 balls of an IPL match for 4. They kept the pressure on in the power play before getting bogged down a little bit as the innings moved on. In scenes that we've seen before at Chennai, it often seems to be easy up front, or easier up front, and then to get a little bit sticky. Nearer the end, Steve Smith and Rishabh Pant were able to add some crucial runs, and they ended up on 159 off of their 20 overs. Now, at half-time, I will confess, I thought that would be too much for Sunrisers. But then Bairstow came out like a bullet fired from a really big gun. A gun that could fire a bullet faster than normal. 38 off 18. And SRH put on almost 60 in the power play, albeit for the loss of a couple of wickets. Of course, it is SRH, so the middle order factor came into play, and they went from way ahead of the game to, in total disarray. But Kane Williamson was sort of there, keeping them just about in touch. It wasn't an amazing innings in terms of guiding them to victory or anything like that, but the game never completely got away from Sunrisers. And so then going into the last couple of overs, one of their debutant player for them, so he played for other franchises, but his SRH debut, Jadeja Suchith blasted 14 off 6 balls to take things to a super over. So to briefly run through the super over, because it was funny, and Dan, I know you can't wait to talk about this as Max has completely had enough of this. It's disappeared. After pulling off a miracle to get to the super over, Sunrisers, they spat in the face of the cricketing gods, to be honest. And they sent out Dave Warner to face the first ball, opting for some reason to not use Johnny Bairstow whatsoever and to keep Kane Williamson off strike. Axar Patel with the ball kept them to just 7 runs, which proved to be not quite enough for Rashid Khan to defend as Delhi won, albeit slightly fortuitously, because there was a leg by to win it off the final ball, and there was one short run by Warner. Let's get to the most pertinent question. So we're not gonna do this in chronological order. Let's just talk about the most important thing first. Dan, why wasn't Bairstow batting in that Super Over?
Well, I have literally no clue. I saw a prominent ex-India player tweet yesterday and speculated it was maybe he was stuck in the toilet or something like that. But, I mean, so when you're picking two players to play a Super Over, right? There's not a great deal to consider. Okay, there's probably three relevant considerations. The first would be, who are your best boundary hitters? Because you just have to tee off straight away, right? And that's mandatory. Second, is there a set batsman who's just finished batting who could possibly be in better touch, be seeing the ball a lot better than someone coming in fresh? Or three, who's bowling the Super Over? Okay. Now, you can kind of understand the logic of Warner batting in the Super Over if they knew that Axar Patel was bowling. But I don't think they did, because Avesh Khan or Rabada probably would have been more likely to have been an option at that point. Is Kane Williamson, the other player in the Super Over, better a good option? Look, Kane Williamson has an excellent upside in terms of his hitting. His death strike rate is not bad at all, certainly for a player who's probably a little bit more responsible than a lot of others. And we mentioned if Virat Kohli is the master of chasing 160 type totals, Kane Williamson's pretty much up there as well, in my opinion. But you Bairstow, why? When you look at if you had a ranking of the boundary percentages of the Sunrisers team, it's Bairstow, the rest. Why would you not? Why would you not? Or Rashid Khan would be quite close, but he just doesn't last very long. Honestly, Bairstow and Rashid Khan probably would have been a better combo to play this Super Over. And I just kind of blew my mind, really. What on earth were they thinking?
I had a couple of theories. You've touched on one of them, which was the Axar Patel, that perhaps maybe they'd second guessed that they were going to go with Axar Patel and didn't want two right-handers. The second one being that Johnny Bairstow was involved in a run-out with David Warner.
Oh, so you think? Yeah.
I think there's vindication in there. Yeah, Warner's revenge.
I think the other Axar Patel thing that could factored in, and again, I think it should be completely ignored.
The England series
is that Axar Patel had his number in the Test series. Bairstow also hit him for at least 1-6 earlier in this match. I don't think you should be picking who goes out to bat in a Super Over based on how they got on in a Test series.
Yeah, I mean,
in completely different conditions.
This is a case where maybe recency bias is what you need, and the recency bias suggests that Johnny Bairstow scored 38 off 18 and hit 4 sixes. So that might have been useful in the Super Over.
It was so dumb. I just can't. Honestly, I couldn't get my head round the fact. We did see last year to think of a comparison. KL Rahul sort of do the same thing for Punjab, where he promoted himself. Literally didn't hit the ball off the square, and I think got bailed out by Mohammad Shami, who bowled like the over of his life to take it to the double Super Over.
Oh yeah.
Rashid Khan was put in a sort of similar situation here. I thought he bowled a reasonably good over given the situation. Yeah. Was there any way they could have won it though? I mean, how often, Dan, I don't know off the top of your head whether you know, how often do teams fail to chase 7 in Super Overs?
Well, I guess the sample size is like tiny, but I would imagine Delhi Capitals were going to be like 90 plus favourites at that point to chase 7. And obviously we talk about the matchups for the Super Over. They probably did work out that Rashid Khan was going to be the logical choice for the Super Over. And so they sent out 2 left-handers, which made a lot of sense. So I think Delhi Capitals, obviously they won the match in the Super Over, but they deserved to win a match just purely on their Super Over strategy, which actually was pretty smart. And Sunrisers, unfortunately, was not.
Sunrisers did score more runs off the bat in the Super Over.
Well,
leg buys what won it.
in Jason Gillespie's world, that would have been a win for the. Cause he wants leg byes abolished, doesn't he? Is there anything else in this match that we need to cover? I can see
Yes.
Vic here has talked about why Williamson might have been used because of the conditions, and how games at that venue seem to be heavily favouring the team batting second because of the dual
Well, I mean,
red
he
ball.
was also 66 not out at the end, so I think the fact that he was, like
Yeah.
Dan said, set batsman, I think that made perfect sense to send him in, especially on that pitch.
Yes. Anything you want to talk about for the rest of the game, Max or Dan?
You go first, Max.
The only thing I really wanted to say was about Delhi Capital's batting and what a turnaround Prithvi Shaw's had this year compared to the UAE. He's been absolutely magnificent, and it's really nice to see him flourishing this year after all the stick that Ross has been giving him.
100%. I think. I thought I was the two things that I thought both teams did really well, which is actually sort of one thing, was attack the power play in Chennai. I think a lot of the other franchises, or in a lot of the other matches, teams haven't gone hard enough early enough in Chennai because you just don't. The option to catch up at the death is almost taken away from you because of the conditions. It just when the ball softens up even a little bit, even after sort of 12 overs, scoring rates actually go down. I think it's the only venue in the IPL where it's harder to score at the death than it is in the middle overs, which tells you quite a significant story because at the death teams are trying to score more usually.
And you just think that would be ideal for Sunrisers, don't you, with the team they've got? But I think their middle order is so bad that it doesn't matter. That just read the scorecard. 638, 66, 4950, 14.
Yes. Yeah,
shocking.
It is so bad. I mean,
every game as well.
Sorry, I'm going to have to bring the score up quickly. The guy who came in number 4 for them. He was, oh my God.
4 off 14.
Yeah, that was one of the most painful innings I've ever sat through. Talk about match losing or potentially match losing.
It is, isn't it? I mean, at that stage, they looked really, really well set. It was another Sunrisers story of they looked like they're going to win this game quite comfortably and then completely capitulated and looked like they'd totally blown it and then somehow managed to unblow it and then blow it again.
Yeah. Would this be a good time at this point in the show to talk about some of the players who are leaving the IPL? Because we've sort of ignored it in a lot of our coverage, and it started to feature slightly more on TV coverage. But the situation isn't very good in India, and Ashwin has decided that it would be better for him and his family if he was helping them with their struggle against coronavirus than playing in the IPL. Max, I don't know. We had a few tweets in about this. We had one from Versha asking basically, and one from Prax as well, asking basically whether we think the IPL should continue at this point.
I think that is it's obvious. It's obviously an important question and quite pertinent, and the situation does sound really quite bad. I think the point comes when the bubble gets burst, I suppose, for want of a better term. If we start seeing a few cases pop up in the IPL and a few players getting it, then I think that's the kind of situation where you might see it being, well, you might consider some sort of delay or postponement. But I think while the bubble is intact and it's all being done quite well, and I think it seems like it's been fairly well managed so far, I think it probably is worth keeping it going because we had a similar thing in the UK with the Premier League when that came back, and they'd decided that they were going to press on with the Premier League in the sort of the winter period and the end of autumn last year when things were starting to get pretty bad over here. And I think that was actually really important for everyone who was locked down and stuck at home to have something to kind of escape the reality of how shit everything is. So as long as they can keep the IPL relatively well protected from everything, I think I would keep it going for the sake of people.
Yeah, I'm sort of slightly conflicted on this. I think I kind of agree with you, Max. I mean, it's in a sense. My logic on this is, what's the point in cancelling it? Like, it is obviously the situation is pretty desperate. I mean, you can see on our timeline regularly people sending tweets out basically asking where the nearest ICU bed is for a relative, and when you're at a point where people are using social media to try and get healthcare to save their life, things are bad. But sort of as you say, it does provide a little bit of relief in a pretty dark time, and it's not as though cancelling Royal Challengers Bangalore v Chennai Super Kings is going to alleviate the situation in some way. If you can run these two things effectively, and they don't affect each other. So if COVID doesn't affect the players' welfare, and similarly if resources aren't diverted to run the IPL away from healthcare, then it probably should continue. But it's a situation that I think we are well aware of, and for our listeners in India, our heart does go out to you. We can see that it's not good, and we hope and we think that it will get better, but for now, stay as safe as you can, basically. And after that, brief diversion, which I think we probably did have to talk about. We can move on to Royal Challengers Bangalore v CSK. Obviously, three RCB players have gone home, or two RCB players have gone home, but maybe we'll get to that in a moment.
Well, it's just the Aussies, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who aren't going to play, it's fine.
Because this was an absolutely huge clash. The South Indian Derby, as I'm calling it. It might be called that as well, but I saw someone say it, and that's what I'm gonna go with that. The unbeaten Royal Challengers Bangalore took on the impressive Chennai Super Kings. CSK won the toss and surprised a few people by deciding to bat first. Dhoni said that he made that decision partly because it was a very hot day. And I think there was some evidence for that, because a lot of the RCB fielders were fielding with ice packs on their head. CSK, they batted pretty well to start off with, and it looked as though they were going to threaten a really big score. And then they had a little bit of a collapse and went into the last over only on 154, which on that Wankhede pitch looked like it would be a reasonably gettable target for the informed RCB side. Enter Jadeja. And things got wild in this over. Jadeja, it absolutely rocked the whole tournament. He hit 5 sixes, a 4 and a 2 off a 7-ball Harshal Patel over. Harshal Patel, who is the current purple cap winner, or holder, and had been having a really good tournament. Now we're all going to remember him for this.
He'd been having a really good day as well. It was 3 for 14, wasn't he?
Yes, he had. Anyway, that over for 37 runs. I think that's a joint record in IPL history. It rocketed CSK up to 191. RCB in response, they batted like a team who just conceded 37 off the last over 3 innings. Possibly unable to believe what had just happened. They stumbled to a total of 122 for 9, as Jadeja took 3 for 13 and completed a run out. Dan, I'm going to go over to you first with the man of the hour. Jadeja, where does he rank in terms of all the players in the IPL? Because he seemed to just win that match by himself.
Okay, so it's interesting because a couple of days ago on Twitter, someone said to me, okay, look, who would your top 11, what would your starting 11 be if you could pick any players in the IPL with 4 overseas players and an 85 crore budget, right? And I probably surprised a few people by saying I would have Jadeja in my team because he's a 3-dimensional player. Indian spinners who bat are a pretty rare resource, and it's all about team balance. And he started in pretty well for me. And and my obviously superb knowledge of cricket was proven by him hitting 62 of 28, 37 in 1 over, and 3 for 13 or 4 overs with the ball. Oh, and let's not forget a run out as well.
Yeah, I think it's what the Aussies call a day out, isn't it?
Yeah.
It was a day out and a half. It was a week out.
He had a week-long bender on that one. That was unbelievable.
I didn't see the post-match presentations, but I'm presuming they just got him to stand there whilst he got like
they just gave him everything.
Showered him in praise.
Moment of the day. Yeah.
It was truly incredible. Dan, I mean, obviously as an RCB fan, you must have been slightly gutted that it happened to you.
Yeah, I was distraught actually. But I will take the positives. My man Devdutt Padikkal again, 34 or 15 balls. We'll take that all day long. Harshal Patel, despite the treatment at the end of the innings, extended his lead as the purple cap holder. But do you know what I was really disappointed in? And I'm actually quite serious here. After the match, they lost by 69 runs. It was an absolute beating. And Virat Kohli's just walking around laughing. I'm like, if you were 0 from 4, you would not be laughing right now, having lost by 69 runs to CSK, basically a team with an average age of about 40. It was like, yeah, on a broad point, I hate it when sports players get thrashed and they walk around laughing. It really, really annoys me.
That surprises me, Dan. So I thought you were kind of like one of those process people who look at sport and and think about it in terms of if you turn up and you do everything you're supposed to do or to the best of your ability every time, then if the results come or the results should come eventually. A one-off defeat and having a bit of a laugh about a one-off defeat, I'd have thought that would pass you by.
No, I'm process driven, but I also want it to hurt as well.
Okay, so you want the emotional pain.
Yeah, the team. When I work with teams, right? Even if we execute our strategies well, there isn't really ever a time where you could execute all your strategies well because you just don't get the perfect match. But the things you're going around in your head after the game, could we done this better? What could we have done instead of this? Blah 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 blah. From my experience, I don't sleep that well after a match, even if we've won. So. And if we've lost and we've made bad decisions a lot, I can't sleep at all. It hurts. It hurts me bad, and that's some personal experience. And I certainly, if I was involved with a team who lost by 70 runs, I would not be laughing. I would be really, really angry. Maybe that's just me, but you see it sometimes. I actually watch a lot of darts. I do like the darts on TV, and some players, like if they lose, they are really heartbroken. It means a lot to them. And then you see some people just like walking off laughing, and I'm just, it's professional sport. I don't like it. I'm probably gonna get abused in the chat for it, but I don't care.
No, actually, a lot of people are agreeing with you. The other. I mean, a couple of people have. Said that the 25th of April is now Jadeja Day in India. I don't know if that's absolutely true, but it should
Every
be.
day is Jadeja Day.
Absolutely should be. Swadin's given us a cup of coffee, which is really nice. And a lot of people, Vic included, want us to talk about whether Stokes or Jadeja is better. Are you probably taking Jadeja in most cricket?
Oh, yeah.
To be honest. I think there's a good argument in Test cricket out of India to have Stokes, but across all formats, Jadeja's such a beast.
What I took from that performance is how lucky we were that Jadeja wasn't available for the England v India.
Yeah, it was like that's why he's better than Axar Patel.
Yeah, he was so good. I think we probably should though. I mean, for all the lauding of how brilliant Jadeja is, and I love the man. I think he's phenomenal. We should pile in on Harshal Patel's final over in that game because that probably was the worst death over I've seen since Ben Stokes at the 2020 World Cup to Brathwaite. Because I mean, the first two were just half volleys on middle stump in the arc, which disappeared. Then he bowled above waist high full toss, and then there was another full toss which disappeared for 6. It was awful. It was absolutely terrible.
I did want to talk about that a little bit. I just want to talk about Harshal Patel in general because he has come kind of from nowhere to be purple cap holder, and I wanted to kind of hear the thoughts from you two about whether this purple patch, as it were, is sustainable long term. And Max, we'll ask you, and then we'll hear from Dan.
Oh, that was the end of right. Okay.
Yeah.
I think it could be because even though today he got well, not today. What was it? Sunday. He got slaughtered in that over. He'd still taken 3 wickets, and he's still chipping in with wickets every game. So he has shown over the first 5-6 games of the tournament, which is a solid chunk of it, that he can regularly take wickets, and he's got a head start now. With that fiver in the first game has given him a lead. So it's going to take some catching up, I think.
Yeah, Dan. I mean, I think to some extent this exposes the slight flaws in the purple cap. We've already talked a lot on this show about how the orange cap doesn't necessarily mean best batter. In fact, quite often it's just awarded to somebody who's had minimal impact overall on the outcome of their team's matches. Purple cap winner, often it seems to go to bowlers who bowl a lot at the death.
Mm-hmm.
Harshal Patel's obviously been doing that if you bowl at the death in the right conditions, there are some free wickets to be had. Has he been lucky in terms of the people he's been getting out, or has he been getting out good batters and just ran into Jadeja having a week-long bender?
Yeah, well, probably a bit of both, I reckon. So you talk, you just mentioned about the death getting to keep wickets and stuff, and you're right. That will massively help that purple cap winner most of the time. Balls per wicket figures just simply much lower at the death because bats take more risks. It's that simple.
And you've got 5 fielders outside the circle.
He was only 1 wicket away from being the purple cap holder, if such things exist, in the recent Syed Mushtaq Ali Trophy as well. And he took 19 wickets at a cost of just under 16 in that, that was before the previous IPL that he didn't actually play in. What I'm trying to say is he's 30 years old, and career turnarounds don't usually happen for 30-year-olds. But there's perhaps some evidence to suggest that he's on an up curve. Maybe he's worked out his game, and there's evidence to suggest that this is not necessarily a one-off. And I'm looking forward to seeing how he does in the rest of the tournament, and maybe that rare career turnaround is actually possible for Harshal Patel.
Well, they're always good stories when it happens, aren't they? Like, you always want to root for the guy who's been a bit of a journeyman and puts it all together. Maybe he'll be the guy who bowls the final over in the final of the IPL.
Well, there you go.
And takes down the trophy for RCB for the first time.
I can tell you one thing as well. He would not have been hit for 37 runs in an over if Kedar Yadav was still playing for CSK.
Unfortunately, he isn't.
Because I never quite got that chance to talk about a Sunrisers middle order. But all I will ask you now is, if Kedar Yadav is the answer, what is the question?
Who's the worst number 6 in the IPL? We did have one question in here from Vinay on Twitter. He asked, basically, should Dhoni bat at 11? I think this might have been a bit tongue-in-cheek. It didn't really have any impact on the outcome of this match, but Dhoni again came in ahead of Sam Curran and DJ Bravo. We've talked about it a little bit. I don't know if we've talked about it, Dan. Where do you see Dhoni's role over the rest of this season?
He's kind of, at this point in time, I'm quite sad to say it because obviously he's been a great of Indian cricket. He's kind of like becoming the IPL equivalent of Darren Sammy, and basically just like doesn't bat, doesn't bowl. Doesn't do a great deal apart from being a specialist captain. And I'm sorry to say that, and I'm probably going to get abused in the chat for saying that. But his match involvement percentage is just tiny right now in terms of like the balls batted or balls bowled. He's costing like, I don't know how much it is, but like ballpark a fifth of their budget, and that's just not good at all. And unfortunately, with the mega auction likely to take place next year, that is something, however awkward it is, that the CSK are going to have to address. Because you can't pay a fifth of your budget for a specialist captain.
We had a couple of big chat questions through Vic, sort of agreeing with us on the purple cap, and then Stanis. He wanted to talk a little bit about Kohli, and I think this might introduce a nice conversation about RCB's batting order, because we've talked a lot about Jadeja, and the good, and the really good, but they had a little bit of agency in their own downfall, RCB. So Stanis asks, Kohli either gets out early or takes too much time to settle in, slowing down the RCB run rate. With ABD, Maxwell and Padakal saving him. Is Kohli overrated? And I think we should extend that question out a little bit and talk about why, or I mean, I would add my view that I think actually in his role as the anchor in this particular batting lineup, I think Kohli works. Max, what do you reckon about RCB and Kohli?
Well, I think it's definitely better this year because he's opening the batting, and we've discussed that before. That he's not sort of coming in and putting the brakes on an innings that's kind of getting going. He's sort of got the opportunity to actually get that start that he needs before he really kicks on. And when you've got someone like Padikal at the other end who has really got hit the ground running now after the first couple of games, 34 off 15 he scored and looked like, again, making the chase look trivial like he did the other day with that fabulous unbeaten 100. What I don't quite get is where Washington Sundar fits in, because he came in at 3 after you'd got not a bad start, and he did Kohli but worse, basically. He took 11 balls to score 7, and then started the Jadeja domino. So I mean, when you've got someone like De Villiers and Glenn Maxwell in there, when you need to get going because you're chasing 190, I don't understand Washington Sundar coming in at 3. I think you need to get ahead, and then maybe towards the end, Sundar would be useful in keeping it ticking. But I think their batting lineup is pretty good. But I just think that was the question for me in that game.
Dan, would you add anything to that, or?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Okay, so Washington Sundar is a good player, I think. However, he should be a good player for someone else, a different team. And that's not meant with any slight on Washington Sundar at all. Like I said, I think he's a good player. But you don't need Washington Sundar and Glenn Maxwell in the same team. And the reason for that is because they're both off-spin bowlers. They both have a preferential matchup to left-handers. And there are not that many left-handers unless you play against Delhi. Okay? Glenn Maxwell, if you look at his numbers against left-handers in domestic cricket, his economy is just over 7 runs and over, and his strike rate's like about 4 overs for a wicket as well. It's not bad at all. And in fact, he's better than a lot of specialist off spinners against left-handers alone. So you could just pick Maxwell as a left-hander target, if you like, with the ball, and then pick a more explosive domestic batsman to cover the gap for Washington Sundar. And I just think that would make a lot of sense to do that over a long period of time. And like I said, he's a good player, but if you've got Maxwell, you don't need Sundar.
And arguably, they have an explosive domestic batsman in their squad that they haven't been using, which we were a little
several, yeah.
So I think that's a fair point.
Strange times. Right, I think we should move on to the last game, and then maybe we will do a quick thoughts on the next couple after that. So, Max, you're down to summarise this one. Before we do, we should mention really quickly that we're sponsored by Woodstock Cricket. Lovely cricket bats. And if you want to support the podcast directly, you can click join down below if you're listening on or watching on YouTube, or head over to Patreon, which is in the show notes. And gives us a slightly better deal for, I think, about the same price. So do that. Keep us going. Keep us really happy. And Max, now you can talk.
Thank you. So this was the prequel to today's Battle of the Dunces. Battle of the Dunces Part 1 between Kolkata Knight Riders and Rajasthan Royals, 2 teams languishing down the bottom at the time. KKR got things started. They did get things started because they got off to a reasonable start once Rahul Tripathi came in, and again scored some decent runs at a decent rate, looking like the sort of the key man in that top order for KKR at the moment. Unfortunately, after that, it kind of fell apart again. Owen Morgan being run out without facing a ball was not part of the plan, and a sort of a runner ball 25 from Dinesh Karthik meant that they managed to trudge their way to a pretty uninspiring 133 for 9 at the Wankede, where obviously we've seen the ball disappearing to all parts. So little hope you would have thought for Knight Riders, but they were playing Rajasthan, so there's always a chance. And Butler failed again. I'm very sad to say. The England talisman is not having a good time at the top of the order. And but what was good to see was Jaiswal coming in and getting his chance finally. And he played some nice shots for his 22. One in particular, I recall a little clip of his legs coming down the wicket was a lovely cricket shot, and he put a bit of impetus into the innings, which Sanju Samson saw home with a captain's innings. Not particularly quickly scored, but that wasn't exactly necessary. And very much in the vein of what Johnny Bairstow did for Sunrisers in their maiden victory this year. Samson just sort of looked at the situation and thought, we need the win. Let's just do this very carefully. And so it was a 6-wicket win, comfortably home with the experience of David Miller to help him. So, Rajasthan still just about hanging on.
Yeah. So I will admit, I didn't catch this match because I was playing cricket. I took 6 for 34 on Saturday afternoon, 6 wickets. It was pretty good. Probably better than this cricket match from the sounds of things. A question I had though, and this sort of relates to today's game a little bit as well, is why is Pat Cummins such a drain in the IPL? I don't know, Max from a technical point of view or Dan from a statistical point of view, whether there's something obviously going on here, but it seems like people are basically targeting him.
It's been a theme, hasn't it? I think from watching Pat Cummins, I think he just tries to come in and bowl the fastest ball he can all the time, which isn't necessarily the right tactic. And I haven't seen him really use much of your classical run saving deliveries with your wide Yorkers and that kind of thing. He just doesn't seem to really get it. But I don't know if the stats back that up at all, Dan, if you've got any actual insight into Pat Cummins' trial.
Kind of. Not really from a statistical point of view, but a different angle, I think. So, boys, have a guess. From the 2017-18 season onwards, so the season that starts in about December 2017 of the Big Bash, how many Big Bash matches do you reckon Pat Cummins has played?
Ooh.
I think 0
4?
would be the answer.
We're kind of halfway between the two. He's played 1.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
In 2019, February 2019, he's played 1 Big Bash match. Okay, so the point I'm trying to make is I don't think that the skills from other formats are really transferable to T20, and it's like kind of like a different sport. And a handful of international matches and some IPL matches last year or whatever, he hadn't barely played T20 between 2017 and last year's IPL.
Yeah. And I thought he grew into last year's IPL a little bit, so maybe it's a similar
that's probably
thing.
pretty logical, really, because in the 3.5-year period, he played a handful of T20 matches. And what do you expect? And then you pay 15 crore for a guy who hasn't barely played T20 and you expect him to be a world beater.
I think you can extrapolate this out further to another guy we were talking about 15 minutes ago. Ben Stokes probably also plays a similarly low number of T20 matches. And I wonder if overall, at least in sort of England and Australia, where the bowlers in particular just do not play enough T20 for people to have sort of an accurate grasp of how good they are, and maybe also have enough sort of game time basically to work on some of those fundamental skills, because we've actually, I think this is a sort of one of our loose themes, that runs scored in bilateral ODI and bilateral T20 cricket are score. You get like a bonus, you get a boost to your average and your strike rate in those games at an international level, because quite often you're playing against the B team of the opposition's bowlers, because they played the Test series and they don't want to thrash them, basically. And you see this in ICC tournaments. You see batting averages and strike rates go down in World Cups as good players come back into the side. So I think you might actually be on something there with Cummins. And Max, I think you probably identified some of the skills that he might need to work on a little bit, don't you think? Like some of those slower balls, some of the slightly different target areas when he's from the release
that's it,
point.
isn't it? When your main diet of cricket is touring and playing test matches with your international side, how often do you practice slower balls and Yorkers? Like, it's all about line and length, and that's what you're training your body to do. And suddenly saying, right, now I need to go and play this completely different thing, like you say, Dan, almost as if it's a different sport, and you're trying to, aim for the block hole or try that, disguised slower ball and cutters and things. It's a different skill set and not something that they regularly practice. So unless they have the opportunity of, like you say, sort of getting used to the IPL and growing into it, I guess, it's not really surprising to see someone who doesn't play much T20 struggle at T20.
Max, was there anything else from this game that you think is a talking point? It looks like a bit of a dud to me.
Yeah, it was pretty uninspiring. Owen Morgan being run out without facing a ball was kind of tragic, wasn't it? His face when he went off. He did manage to show a wry smile on his exit from the middle after failing to dive to make his ground. So that's. That's nice for him, wasn't it? But I suppose Chris Morris showing again his value for Rajasthan, basically tying up the end. He was brought in as a death bowler who can hit, and he really excelled at the death. He took the last 4 wickets and ended up, with an economy rate of 5.75, and that basically put the brakes on any hope KKR had of getting to a defendable total. So I think he's proved to be, I don't know whether you would say worth what they spent, because they spent a lot, but he's proved to be a very sound acquisition. You do wonder if Jofra Archer were around, what things might be like, but
better. They would be better.
I would, yeah, they would be better. But actually, I think I have to give some credit to Mustafiza, because I think he's done quite well in Archer's absence. I mean, obviously nowhere near as good as Archer, but I think he's done all right for a man who's got to fill some pretty big shoes. So I think Rajasthan probably a little better than we gave him credit for, but.
Cool. Right, let's talk about the next couple of matches, because we aren't going to be doing a show tomorrow. We'll be back on Wednesday. Dan, I think you're with us again, aren't you? So,
yep, looking forward to it.
We have, coming up tomorrow, it's Delhi Capitals v Royal Challengers Bangalore. So that's another top of the table clash. Who do you fancy in that one, Dan?
I can't look any further than my boys RCB. Can I get back to winning ways, get back to the top of the table, and get this face mask back on as well?
Max, have you got any thoughts on this match?
I can't wait for it. I think we should be able to put aside our recent spate of slightly less tight games, apart from the Super Over, of course, and we should see some real fireworks tomorrow. I'm interested to see how they deal with there was a game today. Was it today? Or the recent game at Ahmedabad where probably didn't get a real it's been a long day. Didn't get a real sense of what really would be the right score on that. So I think this probably gives us a better opportunity to see how that should play out. I'm going to plump for Delhi. I think CSK and Jadeja have started the inevitable slide of doom for RCB and Kohli, and they're on their way. They're on their way down. I
have to make the call then either way. So I think Delhi were a little bit lucky to beat Sunrisers Hyderabad, and Sunrisers Hyderabad are bad. CSK are good, and so it's no shame in losing to CSK. So therefore, I think RCB are going to win. I think they'll flip the script, and this is their year. They're going to go 13-1, win both their playoff matches, and take home the trophy. Which brings us on to Wednesday's match between Chennai Super Kings and Sunrisers Hyderabad. Max, as a diehard man in yellow, you get to talk about this one first. Who are you backing for the win and why?
Sunrisers. We're going to bloody blow it, aren't we? That's after Sunrisers can put aside Chennai and the horrible, horrible time they've had there, and the fresh pastures. I think will give them fresh mind, and I can just see CSK blowing it, having been so good in that game against RCB. Well, Jadeja being so good, maybe he papered over some cracks.
Yeah, but he papered over them really well.
He did. Maybe, yeah, he did more than paper. He plastered over the cracks.
He did like a full structural analysis of the cracks, repaired the cracks. Dan, same question for you. Chennai Super Kings v Sunrisers Hyderabad. Max thinks that won't go with the form book. I don't know if I agree with him. What do you think?
I've got more faith in Max's boys, CSK, than he's got in himself. I mean, what can you say about Sunrisers? I mean, every game they're making all these changes on a regular basis, and they still can't find this winning formula when they probably didn't have their best team to start with.
Are they doing a Tom Bowler selection? I mean,
was it Ross who coined the term 52 card pickup?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I just can't get behind a team with that middle order. It's just beyond bad. And will Manish Pandey get a run out? Will Kedar Yadav somehow keep his place despite striking at less than 100 over the last 2 and a bit seasons of the IPL? No. They've got barely... I mean, when we spoke before the season about Sunrisers, we were like, okay, they've got 14 to 16 banker overs. Rashid Khan, Bhuvneshwar Kumar, Sandeep Sharma, and Natarajan. And the only player who played out of that the other day was Rashid Khan.
Yeah, we didn't get into that in too much detail. We were so caught up in the Super Over. But Natarajan, he's done for the tournament. Bhuvi pulled up. I think we said it wasn't too bad, but it was bad enough for him to not play. He couldn't bowl 4 overs. That's a big problem for a team that can't really chase 100. Well, they failed to chase 160. I think that's sort of the ceiling of what they're capable of in some ways.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that completely.
I am also going to say Chennai Super Kings, but it's the IPL. There are some really good. Bairstows could get 100 and win it single-handedly, but I think they are almost in that territory. I think they're in the same boat as Rajasthan Royals in that they need quite spectacular individual performances to give them a chance of winning matches, and that's not a particularly successful formula for success, in my opinion. Anyway, that wraps up the cricket podcast for this episode. We will be back, as I said, on Wednesday. A reminder that you should click join on our channel below. You should head over to our Patreon. You should buy a Woodstock cricket bat. Leave a comment after this stream's closed. Follow us on Twitter at The Cricket Pod, and give Dan a follow as well. Dan, where can they find you?
They can find me at SA Advantage on Twitter.
There we are. Should we say goodbye, boys?
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.